Okay, I think it's been a couple months since I've worked on a video. And last I mentioned my next main project was going to be a universal mount for my plow and snowblower and other attachments to the chair. And it took me forever to come up with an idea. I looked at a lot of different things. I looked at solenoids, but most of them are not double acting, so I was worried about. Oh, so what I'm there. So here's the basic idea. Is that I would have this pin. This is a very rough prototype here. Go in the square. I'll have a frame on my plow with a side member, and this pin will just simply push in and latch it. So I looked at a lot of things. I looked at solenoids, and that would probably work, but most of them are either a push or pull, so it would either push to engage and depend on a spring to retract it, or vice versa. And I was worried about it getting hung up, if the spring would be strong enough to pull it back. And they were kind of expensive, roughly $100 a piece, so it'd have been a couple $100 just for the two solenoids. And I thought about hydraulics and on, and really couldn't decide. Oh, and linear actuators, once again, that would be simple, but you know, even the smallest of ones are close to $100. So what I finally decided on is and I've had time to go to the state fair and the county fair, and I looked at a lot of the equipment and loaders and tractors and seeing how they mount their systems, so that gave me some ideas. But here's my basic idea that I'm come up with. This bit of threaded rod still needs to be cut off. So it'll work something like that. Part will go in there and lock this block from spinning. You turn the motor on and it's going to drive this pin in and retract it. So starting with these, I've got a lot of these. I bought a surplus lot of drills. That's going to be 6 years ago. I probably still got 80 of them left. So I have lots of them to work with, basically for free. So I got lots of these little motors with planetary gearboxes in them. So they got a decent amount of torque. They weren't a real high quality drill, so they don't have a lot of torque, but they got a fair amount. And what have I done in the past? I have used these on a number of projects for, you know, a light duty homemade linear actuator. So basically put a coupling on there, connect it to small thread, add another coupling, and I like to use these long ones for, I don't know what the name is. You can find them for all thread, and they come in different diameters, even though they're the same bore. And so what I've done is use that. It gives you more thread. It'll last longer. I started with just a nut and it wore it out really fast. I don't know if you can see that high up there, or if you're blinded by the light. Let me try to tip you up. Sorry about the paw. Come on. So there's one on the wall that I used to open and close the window. And if you can see, the coupling takes up a fair amount of room. And I wanted to keep it fairly small. So what I ended up doing is taking the shaft out of the motor altogether. That was in there. And turned off the threaded end. So if we come over here, this was basically in there, and I just cut off the existing threads and parted off those threads and drilled a little hole in the end of the shaft. I thought it was going to be hardened, but it's not at all. It's really easy to work with. And turned the OD of the threaded rod a little bit and did my best to align it. It's not perfect. I didn't like set it up in the lathe and weld it. I just got that fit as best as I could and set it on the bench and welded it together, and then turned off that little bit of weld there. So that gives me the drive part of the actuator. And then this was my first one. That's a whole nother story, but that one was more complicated to make than it was worth. So what I ended up doing is taking one of those all thread nuts and turning it down and put just so it's round, so it could slip into just a 3/4 by 16 square tubing, and that fit in there, and I got a couple holes drilled in to weld it into place once I get my final assembly in the position I want it. Okay, so that in itself was a lot of work, some fair amount of trial and error, but I think I finally got it close to what I would like, and hopefully it'll work. And then once again, this took me forever, but I drew up a box and some plates in here. I don't know if you can see that highlight there, for a motor mount, and then a shaft guide and some locating slots in the lid in the bottom of the box. They don't show up very well, but they're there. Okay, what else? And made my flat pattern and cut those parts out on the plasma table. So, and a quick highlight, that's where I'm at. I have not test fitted any of this yet. I said this was my first prototype. I had another, must have tossed the motor mount already, to mount that in there, and it slides through the part just fine. So, and the furnace is coming on. Sorry about the noise for a couple of minutes. Starting to get a little chilly today. It's kind of a yucky day. It's rainy and quite soggy out there. We've had rain and rain and rain and rain, and then some more rain this year. Okay. So, I have not started trying to fabricate this yet, but I'll take you along for part of it, see how it bends up. Okay, so I got my parts here. I haven't cleaned any of them up, and I'm not gonna. I'm gonna just roughly fit them. I rarely get things right on the first try. But there's my box. I got a shaft guide and a motor mount. And the lid set to go. And then the box itself. Oops. Oh, I better clean that up. I was being lazy and didn't want to clean it up, but I better, otherwise I'll regret it. Yeah, that's becoming one of my new favorite tools. I put that together a couple weeks ago. It comes in quite handy. It's the first time I've ever used it for this. Let's see if I can bend this by hand. in 2 uprights, and then have some clearance holes. Those pins will go through these. It won't be set back that far. It'll be set closer to the front. And closed in like that, so this will be welded on. And then I can mount this to a new plate here. I'm babbling on, I'll probably edit all this out. And then I'll have all I need on each individual component then. Oh, I forgot. The top of this will be similar to that with a little return on it. So it's going to come up and wrap around. So there'll be an angle here so I can pull up to a matching plate and hook it in there. That's just way too confusing to explain. I'm just going to stop there. But anyhow, it'll be boxed in. That's kind of how a skid steer is. Little U-shaped plate with the little flange coming back, and the pins will push out and connect into it. So I'll be able to drive into it, flip a switch, push the pins out, and it'll be connected to whatever I'm trying to connect to. Okay, so that's all clear as mud, I am certain. I don't even understand it. So I have it actually mostly drawn up for sure. The rough design of what I'm thinking started. Give me a minute here to let's do. So this blue piece is where my box will mount on this face, with the pins coming through these, and then I'll have to do a secondary flange, which doesn't look like I started yet. So connecting to the plow, it would follow up along this line and hook over the top so it's set on there, and with a couple of flanges returning that the pin will catch. Alright, so that's my best attempt to explain it. But I'll get started on this part and bring it back when I get going on that. Thanks.